I think that we have failed our children. For most of the questions I've asked today, the answer, if we wanted to be sincere to ourselves, would be very poor. We all seem to be too busy chasing what I don't know. Because when our parents brought us up, both my parents worked, but they were 100% in my life. They loved me and I loved them back. You know, it was daddy or yo-yo. They say it means something today, but well, we sang it as daddy or yo-yo, mommy or yo-yo. And you were excited to see them come back from work or from the market. And they gave us house chores to do. It didn't matter how wealthy your parents were. You learned to do things at home. You helped out in the kitchen from maybe the age of 4 or 5, doing little things. You learned to wash your socks. You learned to wash your singlets. You learned to wash your underwear, and then graduated, upwards to clothes as you got older. You learned to make your bed in the morning as soon as you got up. You learned to help on Saturdays for the general house cleaning and general compound cleaning. Do we allow our children do these things these days? Or we have a bunch of maids who help us to do all of these things for the children. And then when they tell you that your daughter, for instance, is badly behaved, we throw our hands up in the air and we're all tied up in anger. But your daughter can't lay your bed. Your daughter can't cook. Your daughter can't clean. And not because she didn't want to learn, but more likely because she was never taught. Do we discipline our children? When we were growing up, we were asked to kneel down, raise up our hands, close our eyes, stand in the corner, face the wall, peek pin. And if you went to secondary schools like mine, you don't want to know. You were given a V shape and you were asked to cut the grass. You know, a V shape is endless because it will just keep expanding from the very point where you start the V. It didn't kill us. At some point, it even became fun. It taught us relationships. It taught us bonding. It taught us sharing. I helped my friends out when they got punished, and they helped me out as well. But today, we would never accept that to happen to our children. They're too special. Everything needs to be done for them. So why do we get worried when we notice all the failures that abound around us? And then we start to, say the young ones are this and the youth are that. But what did we teach them? We taught them that it was money over family. Because daddy and mommy are out all day, all night looking for money. We taught them that it was okay to be a certain way. It wasn't okay when we were growing up. Most of us had prayer in the morning with our families, with our parents. How many of us today raised our children with family time in the morning? How many of us wash the windows of our homes maybe once a month, once in 2 months with our children? I grew up doing that, and for me it was heavenly because I love water. So it was an excuse to have water all over me. I washed my father's car. I remember it was the first I remember very well was a Volvo. I still remember the plate number, ECF 6784, and I must have been like 4 or 5 when my dad bought that car. But I loved to wash it. There were people who had that assignment to do, but my parents never pulled me away from being a part of it, even if it was not my assignment or my primary assignment. I learned to cook before I was 9 years old. By the time I was 9 years old, my uncle and grandmas used to come in from the east to Lagos simply to taste chikas, peppered gizzard for my uncle, jollof rice for my grandma. I recall trying to make semovita and the pot got very hot. Anyway, an accident happened. My mom my mom lit my bum bum on top of my pain, oh, but you can guess that was the last time I ever got burnt. What have we done to our children? I weep for the way we have brought up a lot of our children, not all of them. I see a lot of very well-behaved young children around me, but I also see a lot of young, entitled children. Children who have been raised with an entitlement mentality, where they want and they get, they want and they get, they want and they get. They've not been trained to earn the right to something. They've not been trained to respect the views, the wishes of other people. They've not been trained to be considerate of other people. Therefore, there's just 5 pieces of meat in the stew, and maybe ordinarily your mom would give you 2. But you then recall that there's a cousin visiting, and you take 1 so that there's enough to go around, because your mom is not home yet to make more food. We haven't raised them that way. Most of today's children will take 2 or 3, regardless of who else hasn't eaten. Parents, we really, really need to review what we have done. Ask for forgiveness where we need to. And for those kids who have grown older than 18, who are now adults, we need to go on our knees and ask the Holy Spirit to help us where we have failed. And then form a strong advisory board where we actually call them to the table, apologize for failing to bring them upright in certain ways, and work with them towards achieving purpose going forward. But for those of us who are lucky in the sense that our kids are still younger, so there's still the opportunity for us to raise them right, I'd enjoin you to be disciplined with your children. There has to be a wake-up time, a sleep time. There has to be a menu for food in the kitchen. You just don't open the fridge and grab something. There's a menu for the week at least. At the weekends, maybe we could ask, what does anyone want to eat? But Monday through Friday, there's some discipline. Homework needs to be done on time, and largely by yourself, not by teachers we've employed to help you do it after school. We need to monitor our kids, their emotions, their psychological well-being. Is something going wrong? And the child is speaking to us with their eyes, with their emotions, with their whole body, and we are not listening. And in some cases, they actually ask to speak to us, and we still tell them tomorrow, and the tomorrow never comes. Do we withdraw our love because the child has offended us? Do we check their internet, the access they have, randomly too? So for those of us who still have kids within ages 0 to 18, there is still a lot of hope that you can and will get it right. Do not spare the rod and spoil the child. But in saying this, there are some parents also who are over-controlling, who do not let their kids think for themselves. They tell them everything. Wake up, have a bath, say good morning, drink tea, walk to the left, walk to the right. And so the child doesn't develop the senses or the ability to think for themselves. That in itself is not also good. We must allow our children be independent, be free. Ours is to lead by example, discipline them when they go off track, bring them back on track, pray for them, speak with them. You know, there was this program, Tales by Moonlight. I'm not sure it shows again. on television, or maybe they have a newer version of it. But Tales by Moonlight was basically telling our societal stories from our different communities of the right way to live, the way to be the best you, a good person to yourself, to your family, and your community. Someone who loves himself, loves their family, and loves the community at large. I hope there are Tales by Moonlight, maybe past the age where I know if it's still on, but I hope someone listening, if there's nothing like Tales by Moonlight showing, I hope someone decides to bring back a Tales by Moonlight, where our cultural heritage for good is captured in stories, in myths. These things get to the core of the children, help them to develop senses of compassion, of empathy, of love, of caring, of sharing, of discipline, of honesty, of integrity, and not the greed and dishonesty and sheer wanton disrespect that we see today in a lot of ways. I'm not sure I can finish parents in one day. So I'd close by asking that as parents, and when I say parents, you could be a parent to a particular child by being biological, or you could be a parent like we had aunties when we were growing up that we feared more than we feared our parents. Because if auntie steps in, you're done for. She would woz you upside down even before your mom gets to you. And then she'll pull you by your ear and go and still report you to your parents. We had those aunties growing up. So they were parents. You know, in the West, they'll call it public care. Here, it was a cultural thing, a community thing. A child is not raised by just their parents. A child is raised by the village. That's an African proverb. Today, I would say to my neighbor, don't talk to my child, or why did you raise your voice talking to my child? Irrespective of what that child was up to at the time my neighbor spoke to them. I know there are challenges in society as well, where some adults take advantage of children. But we have to find a balance. We have to find a balance. We have to go back to our old cultural ways of raising children, where the village raises the child, where discipline is enforced. And not necessarily because you're whooped. My father never whooped me. But remind me to tell you a story of my hitting the floor and trying to disappear when I saw my father somewhere I shouldn't have been. And he never raised his hands one day. Oh, but my mom beat me for Africa. Oh, she wins the trophy. The best beater for Africa, my mom. You know. But my dad didn't. And I still had so much love and respect and fear in a way for him. I'm not sure my children fear me. I don't want to. I'm not using fear in the sense of God. I'm just in a loose sense. They probably respect me. They love me, I hope. But I'm not sure it's in the same way I loved my parents, or I respected my parents, or I was careful not to do something that would bring my parents' name to disrepute. So have I, as a parent, done all I ought to? I think not. I still have a lot of work cut out for me. And I hope that in my lifetime, I make amends and still raise the best kids ever. For those of you who have younger kids, the time is now to be the best parent you can be. Till I see you next week, thank you for listening.